together.
will
Now, if
save
that
him.
collapsed or was weakened,
Oh,
say China takes Taiwan and we lost in that war or conflict over it, that could be a weakening of the state, and that could delegitimize it, and then people could be trying to break off, and then something like civil war happens.
There's no legitimacy in the state. When you poll average Americans, they hate the state. The state is like a 20% approval rate. My question to you is, if a civil war were to happen, what would it look like? What evidence would you need to see in the real world to know that there would be a civil war?
I would have to see two clear sides, and I would have to see, there would have to be some types of battles, at least with people, two different sides fighting over cities. It might not be like a traditional war. It might be more guerrilla war or something like we saw in the Troubles in Northern Ireland, but it could be something along those regards. I need to see two clear sides.
So let me ask real quick. How many factions were in the Syrian Civil War? How many sides were there?
Well, there are several, and there's several factions in the Lebanese Civil War. Let me rephrase this. There have to be sides where people are fighting lethally, using lethal amounts of violence with guns, with traditional military weaponry.
So what you're saying is, when a civil war starts, you will agree there's a civil war. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I think it'd have to be, even something like the Lebanese Civil War, the Syrian Civil War, where there's like a dozen different factions. There are battles occurring over cities where there are fights between either two or multiple sides over a city, and that's occurring.
So what evidence do you need to believe we are on track for a civil war?
That there are...
No. That was you saying, if a civil war happens, I will agree there's a civil war. What needs to be happening in a country for you to think, hey, a civil war might happen?
There'd have to be like a bleeding Kansas, or something that people are willing to use violence even to get to lethal. It might not be
We
like they're
will
actually
prevail.
fighting for
May the
control of
light
city,
give
but
you
say
strength.
The left.
You can
has
always
an
count on
insurrection in
me.
Seattle, and then they fight with police.
You
and
brave
soldiers
souls
there.
have been chosen to
And
strike
maybe it
into the
doesn't provide
depths of
the
hell
war,
itself
but
to
it
rescue
shows
High Lord
that
Tyrion.
could be replicated.
This
Wait,
is your
why-
last
do
chance
you
to
think that
turn
in the American
back.
Civil War, like the citizens of Atlanta were fighting the Georgian government?
No, but I'm saying that...
Why would the left fight themselves in their own city?
I'm saying if they tried to declare the Seattle independent of the United States, that the state would come down hard on them.
Why would they? I'm just trying to clarify this. In Seattle, when they took over the Chaz for a couple of months and
The
murdered people,
demons
took over
before
the police
us
station,
are all that
the government
stand
largely
between
agreed with them how to
us
do it.
and the
So,
Ashbringer.
it's like saying,
Regardless
there's
of
gotta be
the
two
outcome,
Pointing out a
our
hypothetical.
families
Okay,
will
I'm-
know
I'm-
that
right,
we
so the
fought for the
clarification is,
freedom and
a civil war
safety of our
requires
world.
some sides. But why would they be fighting
We
themselves?
move
I don't understand
on
what
our
you're saying.
champion's
Why
command.
would leftist progressives in a leftist progressive state fight themselves? Wouldn't they want to fight, say, Nebraska or
You could say, you could go this to say Atlanta, or you could say any other city. I'm just saying that, say, you have leftists in a city that launch an insurrection against the city government or the state, and then and they're saying we're now an independent city, Atlanta or Seattle. But if the Chaz then try to take over the city and then say we're independent of the United States government, there would be lethal force to come down.
Wait, hold up. So I'm confused. In the American Civil War in 18, and the American Civil War is not indicative of every other Civil War, but I'm just saying, like, in Georgia, they weren't walking out of the houses and going, oh, I hate the Georgian government, I'm going to declare independence from my own state. They were saying the other people over there are bad. So if Seattle, as a group, says we're going to defy federal law and we're going to ignore federal authority, which they've been doing, I don't understand why your prerequisite is that they have to fight themselves. Like, the people in Seattle who took over and took the police down were largely politically aligned. Wheeler himself came out and joined them in protest in Portland. This is Portland, right? He was with them as they were rioting and protesting and firebombing a federal building.
Yeah.
Like, why are they going to fight themselves?
I think you might be a little too focused on the fact that it's Washington and Seattle. I'm just saying this is a theoretical hypothetical.
Why would any city fight? It's like,
there's a couple of red states where they would fight.
but that's not a civil war. You're saying like a protest in a city.
I'm not saying that this is a civil war. I'm saying that things like this would need to happen to show like the sides.
So when in a civil war did a city fight its own territory? Like, when in a civil war did in the Spanish Civil War, you had the Nationalists and the Republicans, and they controlled urban and rural areas. When in that civil war did the Nationalists in their own territory fight themselves?
I'm using the example of just saying that this would happen, is that it's creating a political revolution.
Okay, no.
think we
we're
might.
bumping into a wall. My point is this. Let's pick any jurisdiction. Let's call it the state of statehood. Doesn't need to be anywhere. The people who live in statehood overwhelmingly vote a certain way, have a certain ideology, and believe in it. Why would it need to be that they fight themselves for it to be evidence of a civil war coming? When in a civil war has an isolated jurisdiction of shared ideology decided to declare war on itself?
I was using the example, but here's what I was trying to say. So I'm going to take it back to the focus on Seattle. Washington's a very blue city.
I'm watching that of anything. I'm saying why would any faction fight itself before a civil war is to begin?
They would be different factions. That's what I was arguing. Because let's say that it's left rising up against the federal government, and so it could be anywhere in this country. I'm just pointing out that this is the left and saying that the federal
Argent
government,
Crusade,
the state of Washington,
must be punished.
Either the right or the left decides that there can be multiple other sides being formed afterwards, but they're rising up against the federal government. It'd be like in the Civil War, where they're rising up against the government, and then many other factions. So, like in
Champion, we must pursue the fiends have Tyrion. We have to act quickly. Champion, I'll signal for our hippogriff riders to get our fallen to Lightsoul Chapel. You must forge ahead and find the High Lord.
Past that into that they're trying to take over the entirety of Portland, and then Portland city government is like, oh, we're sorry.
You mortals are so vain, so arrogant.
I don't think this is likely.
The sundering of this one soul has been taxing. You will be ours soon.
Destroy a federal building in defiance of federal authority and fought with federal authorities in the state side of the would that be a civil war?
No, but it's just a sign of a possible happening elsewhere, and then that begins to escalate into they're trying to take over the city.
By the light,
It would have to be
Tyrion!
over like
By all that is holy,
this incident,
what
there's like
have they
tons
done
of Chaz
to
is
you?
taking over, and then Chaz tries to expand to take over the city. I would say
I'll
that's
break Tyrion free.
a warning sign of something that could happen.
So if a large group of, say, leftists had an autonomous zone that they controlled, like the size of Chaz, and people had already been killed, but if Chaz then started to expand, that makes you think maybe a civil war.
Maybe if they're trying to take over the city and that they have many allies.
The
across
Light's
country, and
greatest
there's a
champion
sizable
has
part
arrived
of
to claim the Holy Ashbringer and lay waste to my kin.
These are just peaceful protesters, but if they're
They
just,
say
if you ask
only
most-
the
if you ask
pure
American
can
people, they're
wield
like,
the high
"We support
blade."
The left-wing autonomous or whatever you want to call themselves, taking over the entire state of
Claim
Washington
your
and declaring themselves
destiny.
independent of the United States government, and then like 20-30% of the population is like yes. Then you have a chance of that
I've
there's
been
some type
waiting
of
for you,
secession or civil war
Paladin.
happening, but
Know that I
don't think
will
it's happening.
rip
And
the
what's
soul
happening-
from your
that's a
flesh
disturbing
and
element
make
that
you
we see
part
in Europe,
my
but
own.
it's almost like the no-go zones that you see in Europe with the.
I will turn you into a weapon of the Legion. I will use your hollow shell to corrupt and destroy everything you have ever loved. Piece by piece.
Something of that sort.
I've gone to some of these areas. I went to Sweden. I went to, I think,
Kneel before your new master.
I went to Germany, and these no-go zones are
Give me
nothing
the strength
like what we saw
to
with Chaz.
shatter these bonds.
Chaz, they murdered people. They unloaded. There was one story where they unloaded for about 10 minutes, hundreds of rounds into a white SUV, just because it was a violation of their territory, and they said they said it was.
You cannot fight my will. You are mine.
Not like
Very
I'm from
well.
Chicago, and I can tell you
This
Chicago's
will be a
like.
fight.
So,
You think this is over,
I don't want to put
Paladin?
anybody in danger.
Our journey together has just begun.
Shoot up the vehicle.
So you're saying that a regular person walking into the Chaz is a rifle gang?
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that there are territories even in America.
Let me tell you that even in Chicago, the idea that there would be a sectioned off area with security.
We have to get out of here before more demons come. Quickly, the High Lord is just outside the temple.
Rifles would unload for 10 minutes, hundreds of rounds into SUVs, and there were other people who were murdered. In Chicago, that's unheard of. In Chicago, you have honor, I would call it respect and honor killings, where you disrespect me,
Come
they go get
closer.
revenge. A lot of people think it's gang related. It's really about disrespect.
You
Guy goes on
must
social media and
wield
smack talks
the
a guy, says
blade.
his girl's ugly.
You
He's gonna
must
go to your house and
stop
drive by.
the
It's
Legion.
jurisdictionless. Certainly gangs have territory where they sell
You
things like this.
must
But
become
that's why I give a warning to a lot of people in
Ash
Chicago.
bringer.
You're not safe anywhere in Chicago. There's no jurisdictional boundaries. When the Chess Chop happened, stay out of the Chess
You
Chop.
will be
There's a
missed,
barrier where guys are standing
brother.
there with rifles from the John Brown Gun Club or whatever, and these people kill the guy.
We must go to
They
Light's
killed
Hope
the
Chapel
guy,
at once.
young
High Lord
black guy
Fordring
who was shot
deserves to
dead,
be
you know,
put
why,
to
then there was a
rest
white SUV incident.
among the
There
ancient
were a few others.
heroes of the light buried
This
there.
is a substantially different from gangland violence.
It is different. I mean, the fact that they do have border guards, but there is a way that there is a different law governing those areas than what's the normal law, and it's even would be this, even the same in Sharia law. And there could be something of these sorts where, I think if they actually had armed border guards and try to do exact replica of Chaz, where it's like there's in some ways an understanding that they're separate from the rest of the city and they're separate from the country, there would be more of a force put on them to end that. But there could be these areas where essentially the left have their own autonomous commune and that they're running it the way they see fit, and then police are just not to go there.
So when I went to Sweden, they loved it. When I first arrived, I met with this Green Party politician who's like a liberal, and I said, "Tell me what's going on in this country." And he laid out his case. They loved it. Huffington Post said, Tim Pool does a great report. And then,
Azeroth
because
will not
I'm
fall
journalism,
while we
I
stand.
said, now let's go to these areas they say are bad. And boy, did they lose their mind
We
when I went
will
to Lincoln.
prevail.
They had no problem when I went to
Take care of
Rosenberg,
yourself.
where I saw a bunch of beautiful apartments. There were many Muslims. People were waving and smiling.
May the light
Groceries
give
going
you
on food. I
strength.
feared nothing. I went to an apartment, met a young couple, and I said, this apartment is better than most apartments in Chicago. And they were all laughing, saying, you see, all this is overblown. Then I went to Rinkeby, and this is a no-go zone in nowhere near how bad Chaz was. But this is the extreme moment. What happened was Somali migrants, refugees, came into the country in the 90s. They had kids. Those kids were born in these enclaves. When they all started moving to the country, they moved to this one area called Rinkeby, which is a shopping center and neighborhood. And
King's Honor,
it
friend.
became dominant by Somali refugees. They had kids. Those kids were born in Sweden. They are Swedish, but they are called immigrants
with
by
honor.
white Swedish people because they're not white Swedes. And Swedish people are extremely racist. Maybe racist isn't the right word, but they're xenophobic. I don't know if I like that word. Let me just put it this way. They're extremely...
Ethnocentric.
No, they're extremely prejudiced against anybody who is not a native-born white Swede who speaks their language perfectly. So if you are like... the encounter that I had with a lot of people who were dual citizens, whose parents were Swedish and then they moved there later, what I found was a lot of people being like, it's really hard for me here because I have an American accent when I speak Swedish, so they don't hire me, they don't want me around, they talk down to me. So what happens then is Rinkeby, these young men who are Somali grow up in a society that treats them like others, and they have no home in Somalia. When you go there, nothing happens. If you go there and you're filming, for instance, there's kind of panic because you're a white person. This is what happened to us, coming with a camera, coming into their neighborhood, and they view themselves as not attached to the state because the police are white people who treat them like they're not Swedish.
There you
so
are.
they've just formed
Over
an
here.
isolated enclave which
Azuna
acts as its own
awaits.
internal state.
It is
But you can go there with no problem. I went bowling. They had
Goodbye.
bowling, I don't know what it's called.
May
Went there
Tyr
with groceries.
guide you.
Nobody had a problem. There was no wear a veil. There was no Muslim. Nothing.
Until
It was
we
when you
meet
came in
again.
acting like you were part of the institutions
My brother
outside,
spoke of a
that
dragon
people would
called
start yelling and saying, "What are
Lanagosa
you doing here?"
at Wormra's temple.
Chaz's job was
Seek
completely
her
different.
out
You
while I
couldn't go
prepare a
inside.
strike force
George
for
Floyd
the
is on his
tomb.
own. You couldn't enter these places without passing through a barricade and armed troops. If you went, for instance, in Atlanta, there were shootings. So there's a big difference between there's a group of people that have a dramatically different worldview and view of the state and what the facts do in these places are.
Yeah, I agree. But the only comparison I was just saying that they have an isolated internal state where they see themselves as something separate from the rest of society, which we already sort of have those places in America, but you could have more that it's ideologically purposed for the left and they're taking over neighborhoods.
You effectively said that you will not believe that there's a civil war until you see a civil war. So I don't see the point of this discussion because if you're not going to accept any amount of evidence that there will be a civil war until there is a civil war, there's nothing I can say to you.
Okay, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I would only say I think there's a civil war going
Hello.
on if there's a civil war going on. That's usually the standard with people
Farewell.
when a civil war happens, is that they're seeing the
Blue
fighting,
is
and
best.
So that means
they're
I
for us.
should
mean,
get
we
back.
were discussing this
Galacron's
about the
rest
Civil
can
War,
be
where they're
dangerous.
insisting we're not in a civil war
Perhaps
until
a
Fort
tracking
Sumter is
spell
fired
will
on.
be
You
of
can predict
use.
this stuff.
There.
You know that's not
A
the
bit
way
of
any
magic
civil
to
war
help
works.
you
And the
follow
thing
in
with the 1,000
Galford's
deaths is
footsteps.
I'm open to being
Good
wrong.
luck.
And the reason I would be wrong is that, first of all, I can just objectively be wrong. There's not going to
Well,
be
what would you
war.
say is a better civil war to look at besides the American
Yes.
Civil War?
Yes. So
Your friend
there's
came
ways to
seeking
study these
answers.
conflicts, and
His
I've
mind
studied cases
flooded
of
by
the Second
memories
Revolution, and
stored in the
there's a
spark
variety
of the
metrics used to
noble
predict
watcher.
events.
He
And so
learned of
four
Tyr's
parallels to the
ancient
most
battle
unlikely
against
Civil War,
Galacron,
the French
and of the
Revolution,
hand he
the fall of the
lost
Roman
in the
Republic,
dragon's
and
maw.
the American Civil War. And for each of them, if the war starts, there's going to be way more than 1,000 deaths. 1,000 deaths. I stand by the bet because I made it with Andrew Heaton a year ago. But if there's going to be a war, 1,000
A
deaths.
silver
what happens
hand
in a
was
single
forged
single
by
battle?
Jotun.
Because if you look at all those
Tyr's
conflicts,
dearest
Civil War,
friend for
American Civil
many
War, French
ages.
Revolution, fall of the Roman
Your
Republic,
friend
the society
sought
was
out
peace.
Jotun,
The political
but the
switch gets
spark
flipped,
did
and then
not
there's
warn
war.
him
There's
of
not
the
gradual
cruel
building
curse
and
with which
everything and
Loken
nothing.
twisted the
So what
Watcher's
you're
mind.
looking at where there's a
The
conflict
paladin
that gradually
rushed
gets
to
worse,
the chasm
that's not
south
already
of
this
here,
happens. It's
only to
very
meet his
clear.
doom.
Like Eric Prince said,
Exactly, yeah.
he said in his experience, in a lot of contexts, everyone who looks and says, one day everything's normal, the next day it's war.
Exactly.
Even with the English Civil War in Rome, the Republic, well, you brought this up, was elite driven. And so you would have to see the phone lines within these elite institutions that would go to war with each other.
Like the Democrats trying to arrest Donald Trump and Trump threatening.
Yeah, but if you think that the Republicans and Democrats, as they exist right now, can muster the forces to have a civil war, then that would be a point. But I just don't
What
see
does
that
that
with the
mean,
Republicans.
muster the forces?
I've
That
been
they
looking
could
all
tell
over
other
for
people to
you.
commit acts of
Have you
violence and
found?
kill other people.
Oh
That'd be
no!
I don't think the Republicans and
Well,
Democrats
but
would do that.
I am
When-
truly sorry.
Do you think
It
that
looks
like,
as
world
though
leaders are
your
like,
friend was
young man, go
crushed.
kill those people? Or
What
do you think
could
they're
have-
like, I need you to guard this territory?
Leave
Don't let anyone
this
else."
I don't think
place.
they could get
Loken's curse compels me to slay the allies of Tyr. Until he comes to collect Tyr's spark, I must...
A just cause, hero.
But let's even say
I
Josh
shall
Hawley
stand.
trying
What
to get
is
people
this
to do out-
essence
do out
the
their duty. I
giant
don't think we could.
speaks
Even
of?
on the Democrats'
I
side,
would
think
have
we
words with
You
him.
leave me no
He
choice.
said Josh Hawley.
I must
to tell
destroy
to go
you.
say, okay, guard this territory. We need you. Here's a gun. Guard this territory. I don't think they can get their followers
Pain.
quite.
Why would it be
Freeze
Josh
my
Hawley?
mind
I'm
of the
just saying this is
curse.
a hypothetical.
But it's also that it's a nonsensical one.
Loken's
That has nothing to do
enchantment
with
won't let me
military.
die. We have only a
The
moment
thing is, it
before I
would be
fall
Republican leaders,
into
if you're looking at
madness
rival
again.
institutions,
Like a governor of a state ordering
governor, it could be a
Here
governor
is
of
the
state, even if
spark.
it's
ordering his national
Take
guard to
it
say,
and
like Bill
flee.
Lee in Tennessee decided
Keep
to
the
say,
memory
yeah, it could be
of my
National Guard,
fallen
but even with
friend.
the National
If you
Guard, when they
desire,
go down
I
the
can
border,
take you
it's
back
mainly
to your
it's
city
mainly
in
a
the
photo op.
sky.
It's not actually that
I
they're-
will return later for
argue two different
Galford's
things.
remains.
The argument you made is the elites will not be able to give orders to troops to do that. And I'm asking what that is.
Oh, to kill. I actually,
When- and so-
actually,
so-
you can even see that in the
What
water.
in what context do you think these conflicts are? Okay, troops, we're gonna go have you kill people.
No, but they would have to. They're there, and then it's like, should we shoot to kill? And then the governor's like, yes. They'd have to have the.
And that happened in Texas.
They do not have an order to shoot to kill.
In Texas, this is what was so scary. Is they said they were armed with the right to defend themselves from lethal force. And I think there was a
Greetings.
story where they fired across the
May
border.
Tyr
There are
die.
many stories where they're fired, but even I remember the story where they.
Until we
there
meet
was a
again.
guardsman who-
You can make your way there through the portal to Dalaran
I
Crater.
don't worry, but I remember.
I will
this-
meet you
they-
there with
But
additional
even with this
forces.
scenario where if they got challenged by
Efrina,
Border
find
Patrol,
your
they're-
brother
they're
and rally at the
back down.
tomb.
I don't
Like
think that
you're-
right now the elites, at either the Democrat or Republican level, have the capacity to say.
Right.
the order to
I think your view of military and history is like movie-esque, as
How
if
is
they're
the movie, yeah.
like Cobra Commander sitting there being like,
No,
send my troops to go kill them.
It's not
That's
Cobra
never what
Commander.
happens.
What I'm saying is that they have the troops there, and then the chain of command asks, do we have the order to kill? And then the governor at this point and the leadership is not going to give that order. They have to go through the chain of command with the assumption that they would have that order if they're challenged by either the federal government or some left-wing militia or something. I don't see that at this point. I think that there is, when they have come up to the precipice of having a point where they challenge either the federal government or challenge the other side, say January 6th or anywhere else, they back down. And you don't really have that capacity of violence. And even when he's bringing up the English Civil War, that's true. It was an elite-driven thing.
Why do cops kill people? Are they given the order to kill?
But they have, it's different from police officers. So
How?
they would have, the scenario you're describing, okay, let's say we're sending out the National Guard to an event, and maybe there's
What is
like
the National Guard? Hold on. See, once again, I think you're making like a lot of movie assumptions.
There's not movie assumptions.
Yes,
What
it
are
is.
the movie
So let's take a look at let's say the Democrat Republicans. Right now, Trump has been arrested several times.
Yes,
He's got 78 charges, I believe. They're trying to put him in jail for hundreds of years, and he's so far complied. What happens if Trump wins the presidency, and then the state of New York says, "Not, you're going to jail." New York has determined you've committed. Bragg says you've committed these crimes. You are being sentenced. The sentencing is delayed. And at the federal level, Trump says, "I'm not going to jail." And Secret Service says, "Whatever you say, Commander-in-Chief."
Yeah.
And then they say, "Then we are going to send authorities to arrest you, and we're going to file that." Do you think that the federal government would allow New York State authorities to enter any other jurisdiction?
Absolutely not. Federal authority trumps state authority, so they would just tell them how to stand.
Right. So then,
There would be no constitutional battle.
what would happen? Would Trump ever? What would happen? Would Trump go to New York?
Or he
So
could
the-
go,
so-
no, he could go to New York because he's like, I'm the head of
What
the state. You're
would
not
you
challenging me as
ask
head of the
of
state. He would even, they've had those battles over whether the president represents the Constitution. He's the constitutional holder. And federal authority trumps state authority. He could go to New York and tell them to try that. And New York is going to back down in that scenario. They're not going to try to arrest the president because they know how that's going to look on the world stage. They're not going to want to have China, Russia look at a random state arresting the president of paying a porn star. They're not going to have that threat to the federal order.
Sky is dark. The fire burns. You strive in vain as fate's wheel turns.
The law enforcement apparatus that exists in this country is.
Beware
It ranges from a wide range of components of force. You have sheriffs and deputies, you have marshals, you have federal authorities. So the question is, if Donald Trump, the Democrats and the Republicans are currently at odds. They're trying to put Trump in prison. There is a constitutional crisis right now that Trump is actually convicted and has not yet faced sentencing, and it's now looking like he's going to win in 11 days.
Yeah.
The polls and betting odds are such that Trump may actually do so well on election day that we don't need 6 days. They may swamp the vote. New York is not going to just announce they're getting rid of these criminal charges. They will still sentence him. I don't know what happens after that. I agree you're likely right that New York's not going to send troops or anybody to go arrest Donald Trump.
Licensing.
But the issue is not that New York or that Democrats or Republicans are going to say, "I hereby declare, send in the troops, kill people." That's nonsense. What happens more likely is that jurisdictions controlled by the federal government will say, "We are going to follow the rules and the chain of command," and jurisdictions controlled by Democrats with their authority, National Guard, police, or otherwise, will say, "We're going to follow the orders of our leadership." There's not likely to be a scenario, or I should say, there is likely to be many scenarios in which the federal government may try to instruct local authorities who say, "We don't answer to you. We answered it to the governor, not to the federal government. States are sovereign." In which case, if New York says, there is absolutely a potential where New York says Trump has been convicted and must go to jail. He cannot pardon himself at the state level. And then California and Illinois and Washington and Oregon say, if Donald Trump sets foot in our states, we will enforce the law. It's not personal. It's not that we hate Donald Trump. It's that the law applies to everyone and no one is above the law. And he's been convicted before he was president. Getting elected does not change the fact that he has to go to jail.
The town
Let's say he goes to Washington.
A
and they say,
cleansing
"Mr. President,
fire.
he's
Time is short. I'll soon retire.
Sentencing and jail term. Trump's going to have to say no to that. The states probably, and that's why I don't agree with Rudyard on 1,000 deaths, will be like, there's no way we're going to try to send police to arrest Donald Trump. Because that, however, we are already asking, this is a question that is already being asked. Donald Trump is under Secret Service protection, and already there's a question of, what if Trump said he would not go to New York to stand trial? We know that the trials are overtly political, and none of them make sense. I argue that Donald Trump, when he was in Florida, and New York and Georgia issued these criminal charges, what Trump should have done is said, they are welcome to come to Florida and serve the paperwork. I don't listen to TV reports, and I do not respect a phone call to a lawyer about what is going on. They can enforce the law as the law prescribes, knock on my door, deliver the warrant, and I will peacefully and gladly join them in answering to these charges. That would put Ron DeSantis in a very serious position, where he's going to have to determine whether or not his state authorities are going to abide by New York authorities to come and arrest the guy who's the front runner. Trump instead says, I will go by peacefully at your request, despite the fact your lack of ability to enforce this. What happens after Trump wins? And this is reality. Right now, I'll say this. Trump is convicted. He is facing sentencing. We don't know how this plays out, and we can entertain normalcy and optimism bias. New York just says, we don't care anymore. We're done. I really doubt that. There is the next case where blue states and Democrats who've literally said Trump is Hitler, who's a despot, who's going to go round up and be Hitler, migrants, refugees they would call them. And then what happens when you combine Donald Trump's efforts to deport 15 to 20 million immigrants
there you are. The area was secured at great cost. This cannot continue.
Now they're going to
We
say,
must retrieve the silver hand and
this in
destroy the entrance to the tomb.
Jamie Raskin said,
I will complete the ritual to release the hammer and collapse the tomb. But we must be quick. I can sense evil emanating from the tomb.
There will be civil war conditions, he said. Now imagine this scenario where
You and
Trump
I
wins.
shall lead a small
You see, he
team
wins.
in
It's a him.
first.
He's handily won.
Let me know when you are
Democrats
ready.
refuse to certify.
Goodbye.
Kamala Harris counts the vote. Who knows what she
Just
does?
a brief
say,
swim,
She
and
goes,
we'll reach the
I
tomb.
understand that these Democrats are refusing to certify, but we still have the majority for certification. Bang, Trump is the president. These Democrats then go to their states and say, not only is Trump a convicted felon who should be in prison, he's not even eligible to be president because of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, and he is illegally occupying the White House through administrative means, and the Supreme Court is protecting him because they're his cronies that he installed. You then end up with blue states saying, if Donald Trump steps foot in this state, he will be arrested and extradited to New York, where we have an agreement to send him. That is all. That's intentionality. What we can say right now is we don't know what the blue states will do.
Threaten the
But
resting
it is
place
true
of the
that
silver
Democrats have said they won't
hand.
certify Trump is a felon and should be in prison. How will blue states handle this worldview that Trump is Hitler, about to round up migrants and refugees, is illegally occupying the White House while ineligible, has stacked the Supreme Court,
Look there.
and should be in prison?
Watch
How will they
yourselves.
rectify that
Let us
worldview
cleanse
while
this
knowing
chamber.
We will do nothing. Nothing will happen. It seems to be an impossibility. Now, it is possible that we don't see any formal governance, like Newsom or Whitmer or whoever else, calling on their national guard.
Well done, everyone.
But I think it's
Let's
entirely
wait.
possible that you'll see
What
vulgar
is that?
people who are just like, I'm here to uphold the rule of law in this country, and behind the Constitution, which is Donald Trump is illegally occupying the White House. And then the risk is, if Trump goes to Michigan, and militia forces that are aligned with Democrats
Last, we can
say,
begin.
Antifa
After the ritual is complete and we have the hammer, the complex will collapse, sealing Tyr's resting place forever.
Factions may present such a threat that I would
Something
go back
is
to what
wrong.
Elwynn said last week.
One of the other
You're not
sparks
seeing
isn't here.
standing armies shooting each other. You're seeing bombs going off in major cities. They rant over.
Okay, if that actually happened, I would say those are the
Wait.
conditions to set off the
I can sense it
I'm
below.
highly doubtful.
Probably
But I
taken
think
by
if you
one
set
of
up
those
that potentiality
monsters.
where they're like,
We must
will
have
try
it.
to arrest
We will begin the
Trump by
search when
any
you are
means
ready,
necessary.
champion.
And they do have these militias, and they even maybe
Once
want
we
their
clear
own
an
law
area,
enforcement to try to arrest
reinforcements
them.
will
And they
secure.
effectively try to kidnap the
Onward,
president.
paladins!
I said, I don't see potentiality where governance tries to arrest Donald Trump. Like, it's a possibility, I shouldn't say there's potentiality, but there's a possibility that Newsom says Trump is a criminal if he steps foot here. I really doubt it. They're going to say, we're not going to do this. But what happens when you have, you already have John Brown Gun Club? There's a guy, one of these guys, who asserted himself as Antifa, and I believe that John Brown Gun
I'll
Club
take care of
went to an
this.
ice facility throwing Molotov and shooting residents. I believe it's very likely, terrifyingly so, that if Trump wins, with the factors that are already true right
This
now.
chasm
Democrats have
oozes
stated he's ineligible
darkness.
and will not certify.
Light
Maybe they do
protectors.
certify, but they
That
still say he's
thing
ineligible.
has what we
They've said,
need.
the vice president went on TV in a press conference and said he is calling for generals like Hitler to
The last of my brothers and sisters. I am all that remains of the Tyr's Guard.
With those factors in mind,
I have the
and
spark.
two assassination attempts
The
on
battle
Trump
this place
already,
has seen
the
has warped
likelihood that if Trump
reality too
goes to a
much.
Democrat
We must
jurisdiction,
finish this now.
he will face extreme violence from roaming factions of insurgency, terroristic violence, I believe is 100%. You don't
We
lose
have
the
wounded.
National Guard.
Aid them while I cover you.
Roving bands of leftist extremists who believe Trump is Hitler
Hello.
and will do anything to stop
How
him.
are you?
There's been 2 assassination attempts and 1 assassination plot